Continue.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about your background. You started as a private company helicopter pilot, correct?
Yeah, as originally when I began, I did not go the military route. So my initial training was 20 years ago. This month is when the first time I flew. Yeah, so yeah, it's been crazy. But I went to a flight school up in Washington State, paid the big bucks, got the loans, all that stuff. It's like going to a doctor's school. It's expensive. But the first time I flew, I realized it's what I wanted to do. I became a flight instructor. I built my time, and then I went and got my first commercial job, which was the Gulf of Mexico. So, and that.
How old were you when you started flying?
26.
26.
I believe, yeah.
But you didn't do any military training prior
That's
to
correct.
that or anything
That's
like
correct.
that?
Yeah. I started from ground zero at the flight school.
Now, 20 years ago, the technology of helicopters was far more or far less advanced as it is today. What was it that inspired you to say, you know what, I want to fly one of those things that looks like it's put together with tape and
yeah. Well, back then, the first one that I flew, because I didn't know, I knew the military stuff and it was cool, you know, and they had the guns, the rockets, but the training helicopter was the R-22, which is a little two-seater. Like you said, it looks like it's put together with tape or something, and it looks like it's going to fall apart in the sky. But it was also the cheapest thing around, and that's the premier training helicopter in the world because it's so cheap to run.
Right.
So
if you crash it, they're like,
yeah, right, yeah,
fine.
not too much a
Not
loss,
too much.
good insurance,
You died,
yeah,
but your helicopter was cheap.
right. Right, but the cost per hour at that time was $185 an hour for flight instruction with an instructor.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and now it's $350 or so. I mean, it's gone up considerably in that amount of time. So, but in reality, that basic skill level you learn with that little helicopter, it carries across to all the helicopters. And all you really learn more of is the technology, like you're talking about. So you have, instead of round gauges, what we call steam gauges, they're glass, right? So it's a glass screen that shows you everything you need to see as a pilot. Now, my helicopter that I fly now is not glass. It's like the old round gauges and stuff. It's still very basic.
Wow.
So it's like going back to square one in a good way.
Yeah.
Because after a while, you fly so many helicopters, and I think I've flown 7 or 8 different types in my career. And after a while, they're all the same. You know what I mean? It's about the job,
right?
More than it is the aircraft. You know?
So flying out in the Gulf of Mexico, what helicopter were you flying around that time?
I flew the same one I'm flying now. As a matter of fact, it's called a Bell 206 Long Ranger, 6-passenger helicopter. It's been around since the late '60s. That's the original design, and it still hasn't changed much since then. They put GPSs in them now that are nice screen GPSs that I have as well. So I mean, to get where you want to go, it's easy to find yourself. You can't mess it up.
You don't want to get lost.
In the jungle or the ocean. Yeah. So I flew that. I flew one called the Bell 407, which is a little bigger engine, stronger, more powerful, can carry more weight, 4 blades instead of 2 on the main rotor. I flew the S-76, which is a 2-pilot helicopter with up to 14 passengers. Mm-hmm. So that was a little kind of a different world because you're splitting duties between yourself and the other pilot. One's the captain, one's the co-pilot kind of thing. And then the other one was EC-135, which is a twin-engine helicopter, but it's a light twin, so it's single pilot. That one had all the nice glass stuff in it, autopilot and all that stuff. So, and then I flew, when I left that job, I flew the AS-350 or A-Star for an EMS company. So basically an air ambulance.
Right. So, and when you were doing the Gulf of Mexico stuff, that was for a oil company.
Yeah, that's
right?
correct. Yeah, it was a company that contracted to the oil companies. So I was flying to that oil company's platforms by contract with our
out
company.
in the middle of the ocean,
Yeah,
like with the rigs up in the.
That's correct. Yeah, there's over 5,000 of those out in the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, 5,000 rigs and platforms. Yeah, I know. Nobody does until you go there. I didn't know, but it's there's over 5,000. Most of them are what they call production platforms. So they've already done the drilling, already drilled the holes. They're bringing out mostly gas, natural gas. They're bringing out natural gas from under the ocean floor and sending it by pipeline to the beach, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the drilling rigs do the the exploratory drilling and the finding of oil and things like that, and they also will produce.
That's so interesting. So they're doing natural gas instead of oil?
They're doing both.
They're doing both. But primarily it's
a lot of natural gas. A lot of natural gas, yeah.
Is that because they ran out of the oil, or is that just because, one, it's more cost effective?
I think they find more natural gas.
More natural gas.
They found more. As a matter of fact, I was there in 2004 to 2009, and the amount of gas they were bringing in to the mainland was tapped out. They had all they needed, and then some. There was so much gas out there.
Oh wow!
So yeah, it was really well produced, and the oil is what they were trying to find. And of course, you had the BP.
That's crazy. So I know I'm talking to the wrong person about this, because you have to have some sort of surrendering to the world if you're going to be flying in a helicopter, right?
Yeah.
You're like, all right, here we go. May God be with me. But the idea of sitting in this oil rig in the middle of the ocean with it's standing, God knows, like only like a couple hundred feet above the ocean level, that's gotta be frightening.
It's a little, you feel a little isolated, I guess, was one thing. I mean, for me, I had a helicopter to go somewhere if I needed to, but if the weather's not good, I wasn't going anywhere, no matter what. So you rely on boats to come rescue you if something happens.
So did you ever get stuck in one of those oil rigs?
I got stuck in terms of the weather, yes, many times, but not any other emergency or anything like that. No.
How long were you there?
I was there. I was in the offshore for 2 years, and then I went to that company's training department, and then I trained the new guys coming in to go offshore. So I did that for about another 2.5, and then I went to Nigeria for the same company. Oh, wow. So I did the same. I flew over there, but yeah.
So what I'm really interested in is. I love that it's your passion is flying and you love what you're doing, right? But I think one of the things that we were talking about affair was your jump from a for-profit company to doing what you love to do for a higher calling, for something that that you can help, that you're providing some sort of service or to your fellow men.
Right.
So you're working for this old company and you're flying, and at what point does it become no longer fun, or what point is there just like a hole in your soul where you could be doing better for your fellow men?
Yeah, that's a good question, because when I was offshore and I wanted something different, I went to the training department, and then when I was done with that, kind of quote unquote done, I wanted something different. I went to Nigeria, but the whole time it's like you said, it's you're kind of doing the same thing. I flew a different aircraft type, but it's really doing the same job, and ultimately it's just collecting a paycheck. So, all this is stirring within me. All these thoughts are stirring within me over this period of time. And while I was in Nigeria, I knew I wanted to do something like you're talking about for your fellow man and that kind of thing. So I eventually left there, and I went to fly EMS. And, EMS is pretty noble. I mean, you're really helping people. As a pilot, you kind of are, but the medical crew on board is really who's doing the saving, if you want to call it saving, or the assisting with the person's medical condition. So even then, it was, I'm doing this and it is helping people, but
you wanted more.
I wanted more, yeah. It wasn't enough.
So with EMS, were you doing like wildlife rescue or like medical emergency out in the middle somewhere, or were you doing, because I know sometimes they do like organ transport?
Yeah, there are a few companies that specifically do that. Yeah. We didn't do any of that with our company. It was taking a person from a small town hospital with lesser care to a bigger town with better care, right. Like from Douglas, Arizona to Tucson, Arizona. Better care here, right? We have bigger hospitals and things, and better doctors. Or you were going out to an accident scene and picking that person up and bringing them into town to a good hospital, a nice trauma hospital and stuff like that. Right. So those were the two, one or the other typically. It was either one or the other, one of those kind of situations.
When you pick up a person, let's say from one of those, like a traffic accident, are you briefed as a pilot of what the severity of the injury is of the person? And
usually when the call came in, it was motor vehicle accident, that's it, or like a heart attack or a stroke, stuff like that. That's all you got, because they don't want to give the pilot a sense of urgency to the point where they're gonna create or have a mistake because they're in such a hurry to save that person.
I was gonna say, because for example, we used to be, I was in law enforcement for 15 years, and one of the biggest things that we had to train our guys was, you're no use to anybody if on your way there you create another hazard. You get in a car accident, you hurt somebody, you hurt yourself.
Same concept.
So it really was about controlling the emotion, which is a noble emotion of wanting to get there and be of some sort of duty or help, but get there safe.
Sure.
Yeah. So you never got briefed on what the injury was.
That's correct.
To avoid that.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's very smart.
Yeah, the med crew would know. They would usually get text on their phone or something because they got to know how to prepare for that patient, which makes sense. But they're not in the driver's seat, bringing them there, so they don't tell me, and that was an understood agreement amongst all med crews and pilots, was like, we don't talk about it until we get there. Now, when you get there as a pilot, and especially if it's a kid, if you have kids and you see a kid and you see a kid hurt, it's disturbing, what I mean? It affects you, so you gotta keep that game face on and realize you're there to help, and I'm here to use my skills to help this person, and so you're gonna know eventually, but you're not gonna launch with that knowledge, because you might hurry and make a mistake, forget something, and then now you got 3 other people hurt because you made
Did you have a co-pilot during this period of time, or was it just
no single pilot? Yeah, ultimately not necessary in the EMS world, and usually very expensive. So who's going? Yeah,
is there a favorable side to having a co-pilot versus a very competent pilot such as yourself, or
not something like that? I mean, they usually hired on, with the competence, because it costs too much money and that's extra weight, right? Mm-hmm. So if that patient weighs 300 pounds, let's say, I got to be able to carry that patient and those 2 med crew people and myself and all the fuel I'm going to need to do it. So you're on a small helicopter, you're limited. The bigger helicopters just cost too much, so nobody's going to pay for that.
Right.
And the company, if they're for profit, can't make money.
So you're constantly doing the math on the weight of the person, the weight of the equipment that you're carrying,
and you get there, and usually the person's not what they said they weighed, or they don't tell you in the first place, one or the other. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you look at them and are like, I don't think I can take it. So you have a limit at the beginning of the day, at the beginning of your shift. Of, okay, today with this crew on board, I can take this much weight of patient.
Right.
And so you let them know at the beginning in the briefing, and that way everybody's aware of, okay, if this guy's more than that, we probably can't take him. And sometimes we had to call another base that might have had a more available weight, or we said you're going by ambulance on the ground or something like that. Yeah, it depends on the person. That's and then there's also girth, so how or height. Can they fit in the helicopter?
Right.
If they're a really wide person or really tall. Past about 6'4", it was a really tight fit. And if they had a leg injury or something from an accident, they ain't fitting, because their leg's going to be mangled inside there,
Right.
So
it's going to be more that. Yeah, no, that's
it's technical sometimes,
So then you go from EMS. How long did you do that?
I did EMS. I worked for that company about 7 years, I believe. 7 years. Yeah, about 7 years.
And during this whole time, you're still thinking about there's more.
Yeah, absolutely. In that company, I did the line pilot job for about 5. Moved up into management. Became a regional manager, and where I was an aviation manager over a group of pilots with 2 other guys. It was 170 pilots in 6 states, and it was a great intro into leadership. And I personally believe that God set that stage for me, because right now my boss is leaving, and I'll be moving in his position, and that's something on my resume. I have 2.5 years of experience of doing,
right.
Which
so
kind
let's
of led
talk
to
about where you ended up now. You work for a wonderful company that does emergency relief worldwide.
Yeah, that's correct. Samaritan's Purse is the name of the organization. It is a nonprofit organization, and doing something what a lot of people would call humanitarian is great. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a nice thing to do. And it definitely helps. There's a lot of need out there all the time. But even then, even you could call EMS almost humanitarian in some ways, but there's still that empty feeling. And Samaritan's Purse does it in the name of Jesus. They do it because of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And they want those people to also know Jesus, but also meet their basic needs at the same time. So if you're hungry and I don't bring any food for you, but I want to tell you about God, what good is that to you? Right. That's right. You don't want to hear it. You want to fill your belly, right? And then maybe you can concentrate enough to listen or whatever. But
they've done research, and one of the theories of when the need for spiritual guidance, or that hunger for the spiritual side of humanity, when did it start? And looking at societies throughout history, it's not until the basic needs are met.
Yeah,
right? So
that's correct.
if I constantly have to warn them about the saber tooth, in the cave, or the spear, or where my next meal is going to come from, I don't really have time to sit there and and start pondering about my existence, the meaning of life, or or anything else. Really, it's not until those basic needs are met and I have a stable life, and
that's great.
And then I have time to put the spear down and start, some of that.
Yes, exactly. You've got no time to address your emotions because hunger is, overcoming everything, or just a shelter over your head or something like that. Absolutely. And in a place like Liberia, it's one of many places that are similar, but a lot of them don't have all that. A daily meal. I want food and I want it now. I need it now. If I get money from somewhere, whether I get it from a person or whoever, I'm going to spend it now because I need to fill my belly now.
Yeah.
There's no thought of the future. There's no hope. That's what it amounts to. Is there's no hope. And that's where God comes in there. Is He gives you hope. You have that hope, even if you don't have food today, you have hope for eternity. You know what I mean? There's a long-term.
But you guys have a presence there where it's providing that hope. There's an organization. There's the understanding of there's people that you may not see them in person, but they care for you and they're provided. They're donating, and here we are.
Yes.
But I was listening to this very interesting podcast, and again on the concept of hope and basic needs, and it's Henry Rollins goes out into Africa, and he's in the middle of nowhere, and he's with this tribe, and they're talking about language, and they're kind of comparing what words they have in their native language as to compare to the English language. So he's having a blast with the young crowd. As far as vacation, hospital, they'll have a word for vacation, and they kind of have to explain to them what vacation is.
Sure.
Because, well, vacation is grab what you have and you go somewhere else. And
concept.
Why would I go somewhere else?
Right.
Hospital, and they're like, the elder? No. Hospital. It's people that so they couldn't get it. So finally, he's interrupted by the elder of the tribe, and he has a little bag of rice and a spear, and he says, "Listen," he goes, "if I'm hungry today, I cook this rice, and my belly is full. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow, I have to go hunt with the spear, and the spear will break, but I eat. So the day after tomorrow, I'm dead, because I have no rice and I have no meat." There. And that's so...
It's eye-opening. It's eye-opening.
Live in 3 days basis.
Yes.
It's so funny, because we're here in Western America, or west part of the world. We're making plans for April. Mm-hmm. I'm making plans for April. Mm-hmm. I'm making plans for October, like as if I'm guaranteed that this is somehow going to happen.
Yes, that's correct.
But
that's correct.
As to compare it to other parts of the world, where they're like 3 days. 3 days, it's all you got.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right.
So, Liberia, I'm fascinated by this part of the world because, as you said, there's no hope. But as you also said, there is an incredible group of people, such as you, such as the company you're working for. I'm sure there's plenty of others.
There are others.
But it's also a part of the world that is in chaos, and there's protests due to corruption, and they're battling with like a rampant heroin addiction that's destroying their society. Mm-hmm. Cannibalism, warlords. Mm-hmm. We're fascinated by this gentleman by the name of General Bud Dakin.
Yeah, right.
Who is, and he's still out there. It's a very interesting individual. But what was it about Liberia that captured you as to this is where I'm going to serve?
I think when I went to Nigeria, I started realizing that somewhere in Africa, was where I was going to be on the mission field. Now, when I met my wife originally, she was already on the mission field. So when we got together and started talking,
what was she doing?
She was in Mongolia, and she was teaching English to. It's kind of funny. She was teaching English to university teachers that were teaching English. So she taught them English so they could teach their students English.
Beautiful.
And that was her in, because missionaries are not allowed in Mongolia at all. So she couldn't say, "Hey, I'm a missionary," and come in there.
Why are they not allowed?
Mongolia does not allow it. Just for whatever reason.
Nothing that's religious based, or just any kind of missionary period.
Any kind of missionary period, yeah, wow. Yeah. So they'll allow money to come in, industry to come in, sure, and they know they're there. I mean, the Mormons have a presence there and things like that. They got a temple or whatever, and they know those people are there. But you can't say, "I'm here to be a missionary." You have to have a trade of some kind. You have to have a job.
Yeah, that's always dangerous. The whole concept that they know that they're there, but they're kind of turning a blind eye, because that blind eye is going to open.
It can turn anytime.
That's
correct.
In China.
Yeah, recently it happened in China.
There was a Christian church that was operating out of private property, and finally China was like, all right, enough. So they blew it up.
Yeah.
They went in there. They went in this guy's private property, strapped dynamite, and blew up the church.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yep, and they booted out many Christians. They kicked them out of the country, never to return. That happened recently as well. My wife has friends and family over there as well that
were in China with this.
Yeah, were in China and they were kicked out. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So so like you said, the eye can open any time, and then what do you got? You know, if that certain person from the government or whoever thinks they're a nuisance, then see you later, and you have.
There it goes.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And you pick up and leave, man, and that's where you've
and hopefully
established
that's
yourself.
the end of it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, hopefully it doesn't result in mass killings or something like that. It's terrible, or imprisonment or something, which in some places it does. Yeah. North Korea, for example. So yeah, she was doing that. We were. That's what kind of brought us together, talking about the future and things like that. When we started getting to know each other, that was our thing in common. We thought it was going to be more Asia because I grew up in Japan. She had she'd been in Taiwan and various Asian places, but when I started heading to Nigeria, I realized this is where the need is, where I'm going to be.
What is it? What did you see there? Like, obviously there was a need, but if there was, what was it about it? Was it inspiration?
Yeah, on a personal level, I guess if you want to call it attraction, just the bare bones need, and it was so widespread, and the violence too. I mean, Africa in general is kind of a violent place. And violence sparks out of nowhere at a moment's notice with no forewarning many times. And I saw that in Nigeria too, where, all of a sudden there would be this massive crowd and people start, punching, throwing, and waving sticks. And then the police comes in and he's got a gun, but he doesn't use it, and all kinds of wild stuff. And it just popped out of nowhere. And I was in Senegal as well.
Were these demonstrations against the government, against tribal?
No, it was just people fighting people. Yeah,
no.
A lot of times it was tribal.
Yeah.
Like if they called it a clan in Nigeria. So if I'm from this clan, you're from that one. We're all automatically against each other, or you're going to side with your clan first.
Right.
I guess over things. So
what is a form of government? It's how they operate.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And really, that's what runs the show. It's not so much the democracy face in front of the world. It's really the tribal stuff behind that, and the same is the case in Liberia as well. I spent two short-term trips in Senegal. I didn't really see that side of it as much because I interacted with the individual more often in Senegal than I did. I was able to go to the villages and stuff, but you see a lot of similarities, similar mentalities and cultures that have passed through in Africa in general, and they carry from country to country. Even though the cultures are very different, the similarities with their mindset on money and things like that is all very similar. And I think it comes from the tribe concept.
How do they look at money?
If you have $1,000 and I know you, whether I'm a relative or a friend, and I ask you for $100, you have to give it to me. You have to give it to me culturally. If you don't, you cannot. But if you don't, everybody's going to come down on you, like your family. And why didn't you give that to him? Why aren't you helping your fellow cousin or whatever, or your friend? Why aren't you helping? It's that kind of thing. So there's this cultural pressure that's underlying, and that is Africa, man. That is Africa. And even if it's a jacket, right? If you're a sweatshirt, I'm cold, I want your sweatshirt, and I ask you for it, you give it to me. That's how it works, man. Yeah. So there's no concept. We go back to, is that funny? We go back to this is so foreign to us as Americans, you know what I mean? And so you go back to the idea of saving for tomorrow and thinking about April, like you were saying. That doesn't happen. It's now. And once again, hey, I need the money, I need it now. And hey, maybe I need it to buy this item. I want a laptop or whatever, and my friend's got one for $50. Can I have $50 to do what I want with it? Here's your $50, and you go buy it, and that's the end of that. You know what I mean? There's no banks, don't have loans there. There's none of that stuff. Yeah. So if you want to build a house, you build as you go. Like, so you get a little money, you buy the concrete, you build the blocks, or you buy the concrete as blocks, you build a part of a wall, and then you got no money, and then you do it again the next time you get money. So you build a house, and it'll take you 10 years.
That's so funny, because that's how a lot of countries with shaky economies. That's how people build.
Yeah.
For example, in I was born and raised in Mexico, and that's how things are. Houses look half built, but in reality, there's a section of the house that's complete. It's just they're building this 3 other rooms that will eventually be done.
Yes. Same concept, same idea. Just get a little bit of money, and the the idea behind that is, I talked to one of the librarians at length about it, and he actually gave me some good insight. I said, why do you have to give it? I mean, that's your money. You earned it. And that's how we think, right?
Right.
Well, I earned the money. I'm giving you nothing. You know, go to the bank or something. Yeah, that's what we think. And he's like, well, I'm hoping that if I need help next time, you help me.
Right.
Right.
And that makes sense. But
It
I
does.
think if somebody came up and asked me for $100, I would have a couple of questions.
Sure.
As to the why.
What are you doing with it? Yeah,
what
yeah.
Are you doing with
yeah.
it? You know,
and buy drugs or something? You know, what are you doing? Yeah. Why am I giving you money? Especially.
laptop, you don't need a laptop.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, right. Yeah. Is it food you need, or come eat my table?
I'll feed you.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
You know, but yeah, no, that's so interesting.
It's
That it's
survival.
obligated.
It's survival. Yeah, and it's even at the if you have a job and I don't, and let's say 10 of your family members don't, they're coming to eat at your house. You know what I mean? Because you got a job. It's expected. It's expected. So it's expected that you'll be supplying food for all of them.
Right.
And
is there a sense of gratitude to it, or is it a sense of duty to it?
I think it's a little both, depending on the person. Because at the core they're human. And I've had those conversations where it's like, look, man, isn't that kind of unfair that you're having to support this person's
10
friend?
people,
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it's almost like a shrug of the shoulders, because it's like, yes, but that's our culture, And so now many people, I asked that question too. Of my friend. His name was Paul, and I said, Paul, man, what if I just never pay you back? And he's like, well, I just hope that you do one day, and that's where he left it. And he said, but there are people that are very thankful, and thank you so much for helping me, and thank you. There are people like that. Right. So,
and you would hope, but no, there's I think there's, like I said, there's some cultures that know, like the youth knows what this economical situation of their country is. So there's habits or customs that develop out of that. So for example, in Brazil, if you buy a beer, it comes with 3 cups automatically.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, it comes with 3 cups because you don't buy a beer and start sipping it there. It's automatically comes with 3 cups, and you split it between 3 people.
Yeah.
So it's out of knowing that the store owner already understands that you probably all pitched in, or one of you guys has money, or you're taking turns buying the beer, but it automatically comes with 3 cups.
Interesting.
So yeah, I think that's as long if it comes from a place of gratitude, or with gratitude, I think that's a beautiful idea of maybe I don't need to drink this entire beer by myself and feel bloated. Maybe I can just have the 1/4 of the beer, feel satisfied, know that I tasted something really good, but know that I also provided for two or three other people.
Yes, because the community is a big deal.
Right.
Even community members helping community members, it's a big deal.
That's a thing for here in America.
It absolutely
right?
we're
you go to these
isolations.
restaurants and this giant plates,
trucker sized.
and
Yeah,
it's like it's just for you.
That's right.
It's just for
That's
you.
right. And it's almost embarrassing in some ways because a lot of people in Liberia either have a relative in America or they have seen some on TV or YouTube. They know about it, right? They know about what we have. White means money. I mean, that's what I was told by a Liberian. White means money. And so you get asked for money all the time. But I never really discuss those kinds of concepts because I don't think they could fully understand how plentiful it is here. Unless you show up and then it's major culture shock. But, show up and have a meal that's, the giant hash browns and the 5 eggs and whatever,
Right,
and because that'll feed them for days and days,
Right. Well, that's a 5-member family meal.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I was talking to one younger guy that worked for us, and he was talking about fitness and working out and things like this. And I was talking about, your protein and your carbs and your fat and stuff like that. He's like, we Liberians, we don't know any of that stuff. He goes, all we know is bellyful. Just like you were saying, belly, and that's what he called it. That's what they call it, bellyful. It's all about bellyful. Yeah. So if rice fills your belly that day, that's what you get. If it's some kind of mash up cassava root, stuff like that, they call it fufu. And it's actually slimy, so it's made to not chew. So, yeah, I've tried it. It's disgusting, but it's the texture, not the taste.
Just salt.
That's salted up, man. And but it's made to swallow whole, so that you get belly full as fast as possible, and that's kind of the village mentality. And so I was like, it was eye opening. It was within my first month there, and I was like, yeah, I guess that makes sense since they don't have hardly their daily food needs met. Now he had a job and he was able to do that, but he would still buy rice on the economy, on the market, and things like that. For us as Westerners, even as we eat, things are very limited compared to what we get in the States, compared to how we eat in the States. There are some restaurants and things, and most of them are run by Lebanese. Lebanese kind of run all the economy and the industry.
Really?
Yeah, very much so. Generational. They've been there since the '60s, probably.
How's that perceived by the local?
They see it Western things for Western people, kind of thing. That's how they see it. They can't go there because they can't afford it. Right. You buy a tube of Crest toothpaste for $2.50 here. It's $9 at the store there. Yeah, so that's one example if you can get it. So, but a lot of their items are imported. All of it's imported. Morocco brings in vegetables and fruits. It's minimal, whatever they happen to have. So, you can't just say, hey, I feel like an avocado or pineapple today. It's whatever they got, melons or whatever. And then they grow some fruits there or vegetables there. They have some natural fruits there: mango, papaya, pineapple. And then maybe like tomatoes and some lettuce and some cucumbers, and that's about it. So they just don't have it's tropical, so you got the moisture in the sun to grow stuff really well. They just don't have the understanding, the education to know.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if they had an understanding how to have an agricultural industry,
they would rule the world, man.
No.
They would, yeah. They just, there's pockets of that, sure, and a lot of them have had some kind of NGO coming in to train them on how to do that, and many of them are receptive. Some are not. Some just want to stay with the old ways or whatever.
What are the old ways of just
subsistence, living day by day? They may live with whatever they can see. Plantains, bananas in the jungle.
Just picking,
rice if they can go buy it somewhere, if they can get the money to buy it. A lot of times they'll barter. Like somebody will have a trade, like they know how to build the buildings, build the houses or something, and they'll.
But
do that
is there
in exchange
push
for
to
food.
try to educate them, to explain to them how rich their soil is and their?
Yeah, it's there. It's there. But once again, we're going back to what we talked about offline about how you have to get someone who wants to invest for their benefit and not their own benefit. So a country or an entity. So Samaritans.
That's going to be very difficult.
It absolutely is. Absolutely is. No, so Samaritan's Purse, going back to Samaritan's Purse, they do that, which is, I've been able to go into the field and see this. Right. I always kind of have an idea of what it was like, but when I went in the field, I saw how they did it, and they do it very well because they don't just hand it to them. They say, look, we're going to set you up as a beekeeper. Are you interested? Yes, I would like to do that. Okay, here's what you need to do it. We'll give you the bare basic supplies. Here's how you attract the bees. Here's how the bees work, right? How they run and how they operate. And here's how to do all that. And then here's how to pull the honey out of the hive. And here's, you bottle it and sell it. And they do that. And it's excellent. It's really good honey. And then when you get that money, you take that and you buy some more supplies or fix your unit or whatever, or get another one, a second one, and have more bees somewhere else and those kinds of things. So they teach them all that. And then, the question always comes up, why are you doing this? Why are you here? Why are you helping us? Because in the village, it's not like the city. They don't see, foreigners too often. Or even, these are Liberians that are trained by Samaritan's Purse doing this. And it's in Jesus' name. It's because we want you to know the gospel. And we want to help meet your needs too, because we know you need that too,
Right.
So you've got a variance on what these people do with it after the fact. So culturally, it's belly full, right back to the belly full. Yeah. So I spend the money, or I sell the honey, I get the money, I buy my food, I have a feast, and now I have nothing.
It's so fascinating because you can't. For people that don't understand those cultures, I think that they want to right away implement a democratic ruling and a banking system, and they're like, well, just look at us. They don't understand that, and I think, and it was a very good observation made by John McCain that this is during the Obama administration, because I think Obama, with a good thinking and good nature, he wanted to push democracy and push a government over to the Middle East, and he said it the best. John McCain said it the best. He said, "These people haven't changed in the way they operate since the days of Alexander the Great."
That's correct.
That's it.
That's correct.
It hasn't changed. It hasn't evolved, and it hasn't evolved because it's sustaining. They don't understand the concept of the war beyond sustaining, the war beyond survival, which is now producing. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It's alien to them.
Yes.
It's alien to them.
You're spot on, and that's until you go over there and see it. I mean, you and I can have. You obviously do your research and you see that happening, and even the greatest organizations and countries that have millions of dollars don't understand that. And they don't understand the bare bones thing is relationship. It's all about the relationship. When you lead someone for whatever you're leading them to, it's about relationship. You're bringing them to see another way or a new concept or a new learning. And a lot of the countries and the companies that go into these places like Liberia will throw money at them, which is fine, but they walk away. Here's your money. Okay, you're asking for some money from us? Okay, we'll give you $1 million to do this project, some rice fields. See you later. And they'll do the bare bones, but they don't maintain a relationship. And so the people are waiting for the next handout.
Right.
So, you know what I'm saying? And that's what happens. It creates that kind of mentality. The Chinese have gone to, when I was in Senegal, they went in Senegal and built a nice hospital. I mean, it was pristine. Chinese manufacturer is pretty good. They build it up nice. It looks really modern and everything like that. But there's no trained doctors or nurses going there. There's nobody that knows how to work the equipment. The equipment's in there. It just sat there. And there was nobody there. It was just a big, nice, pretty building. It had been there a few years.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so that's one example. I mean, even in Liberia, you see the same thing. You see, America's pretty good about, okay, we want this to benefit you. If we give you this money, how's it going to benefit you? So they have a dam on one of the major rivers that supplies 65% of Monrovia, the capital's electricity. Mm-hmm. And so America went in with Germany, I think Poland, and one other country to refund the building of that after it got destroyed in the war. And but that's going to benefit Monrovia because now they have electricity, on a semi-regular basis, And so they do things like that. But and America does have an ongoing relationship with Liberia because of the way Liberia started when it first became a country. So you see a lot of the laws and the way the government's set up is very similar to ours. Not the same, but very similar. For that reason.
When you do you feel safe walking around the village in Liberia?
Yeah, I've never felt threatened. The times that I get worried are like, because when a helicopter shows up, it's a big deal, right? Yeah. I mean, there's only one of two in the country, and the other one does a commercial iron ore operation. So we have our name on the side or our symbol and everything, and they kind of know what you're there for. So they all come to see you. And, for the kids, it's a big deal to touch the helicopter. So they all want to touch it, and they surround you. I mean, I can show you video and pictures. They surround you. It's hundreds of people, mostly kids. And so if they want to touch it, that's okay. I'm okay with that. But if they touch the wrong part and it breaks, I'm stuck. I am stuck. And I'm way out there. I'm 200 miles from main base, you know what I mean? So those are kind of concerning. I've never felt physically threatened, like they're going to beat me up or something, nothing like that. I did land in one place where it was unscheduled. I landed in the wrong place. I was given the wrong place by the guy who sent me there. And
you punched that guy when you found him?
No. It's like, man, you put me in a hurt. You put me in a world of hurt here. But no, the guy was just upset because he was a security manager for that field. It was a soccer field, and he was all about, you're not supposed to land here, and he wanted me to talk to his boss and all this stuff. And his boss laughed. I mean, he's like, I told him what happened, and he's like, oh, just don't worry about it. He goes, you're free to go, man. Just get out of here. So it was fine, but I could tell he was very upset. And you just talk to him like normal. They're not big on like attacking right away and asking questions later. They're not big on that. The police might be, but that's it. But it's your typical country. I mean, you get pulled over by police because you're white, and then they try to extort you for money.
Right.
I mean, I've been pulled over 5 times in a year, and it's pretty much the same scenario every time.
We could take care of this right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, you were touching your cell phone, and it's $50. It's $50. I was like, okay, well, give me the ticket. I'll go ahead and pay it. I'm sorry, I did not know that. You just give $50 right now. Seem like you're saying, and no, you have to be diplomatic and talk your way through it. Don't get mad. I've never had a problem not getting mad doing it and getting by without paying.
Well, because you understand it too, right? So I mean, like, speaking about like bribery, like for law enforcement, like in Mexico, man, these guys are operating on a $7 a week salary.
Yes. I totally get it.
Yeah.
I
get it.
Yeah. Why wouldn't they do that? If I saw a guy that I knew was rich, why wouldn't I ask him for money when I'm desperate for something?
It's a concept of the child starving that steals the apple.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is it wrong that he stole it? He's starving.
Yeah. That's
right?
correct.
Or should we be mad at the entity, the government,
the system,
the world, the system that is not providing for it?
That's correct. That's correct.
We'll all be doing it.
Yeah.
We'll all be doing it. But I think we get high and mighty a little bit.
You're absolutely
Over
right.
here,
It's
over
easy
here,
to do that.
It's easier to point the finger.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And we're so free in America that we can do that. But
people don't understand how free we are. They don't understand from the
yes.
speech to social media to our
Especially the
ability
speech.
to share ideas and information.
Yes.
It's so crazy.
Yes, and then do something about it and act on it and stuff like that. And over there, everybody has a voice about their opinion on the government and stuff like that. But you don't go too far because certain people have disappeared.
Yeah.
There was
Places like
a
North
senator lady that was beat up and assaulted and all that stuff. I mean, it's
Places like North Korea, like the neighbors don't talk to one another because there is a reward system in place if you turn your neighbor in for speaking against the government.
Right.
And in places like China, I don't know if you've seen this. In places like China, they have this face recognition system.
Yes, I heard of it.
Have you heard of it? Have you seen the jaywalking?
I have not seen it. Yeah.
Oh, it's phenomenal. They have instant face recognition system, right? So there's a couple of systems in place. Number one, it's the one where as you're walking down the street, it'll say 6'1", red t-shirt, brown pants, and it's tracking should they need that later. They already know what you were wearing at the time.
Right. Wow.
But if you jaywalk, there are these digital panels on the side of the street that if you jaywalk, your name gets brought up.
No kidding.
It gets posted.
Where people can see it right now on the screen.
So
really,
if I
really.
jaywalk right now, if I cross the street over here and I jaywalk, my name immediately gets posted as I'm crossed as my foot is stepping on the concrete sidewalk on the other side. My face is already up there, speaking about how I jaywalked there, blah, blah, blah. And it's there until another person commits, and I think they can fit like up to 3 names.
Wow.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Scary almost, man.
It's
good. Yeah. And face recognition and all this, and they got your file. I mean, they got your identity on your thumbprint, whatever. That's wild. Wow.
So yeah. So it's so insane to see people. Obviously there are abuses of power here in America when it comes down to sharing information and stuff. So for example, like Google just obtained medical records from people unbeknownst to them.
Yeah, right.
But at the same time, it's not done like the way it's done in other countries.
Where it's forced upon you, and
right.
It's
like where you're trapped and you're part of that, and you have to accept it. You're born into that system.
Yes, yeah.
So
you can't escape it.
Yeah, it's so insane, man.
Wow, man.
Insane.
Wow.
So how long? So you're about to take over. What's going to be your new role for this company?
Yeah, so I will still be the helicopter pilot. I will still do everything I'm doing now. And then on top of that, it's called a project manager for aviation. That's what the position is called. So that's what my boss now, his name is Noel, is doing right now. And it's just, he put in his time to leave. They'll find another airplane pilot. I won't be doing that. I'm not airplane rated. But I'll be coordinating the operations of the aviation to support projects. So we've got 3, 4, 5, 6 employees right now in the aviation group. And we're separate from the main office, so we work together, but we kind of operate separately. But most of what we do is bring their people to the field bases. Wow. That's the majority of what we do.
So I want to hit 2 points real quick, and one was very interesting. You mentioned leadership, how important that was in places like this, right? So you have over 100 people under your supervision, and you're sending them to probably one of the most unstable, dangerous parts of the world, right? And you're meeting, you're telling these people that what the mission is, right? And obviously, it's to provide both the spiritual and the physical needs of them. What's the biggest leadership challenge that you have?
That's a good question. I would say a big part of it would be the cross-cultural aspect, because with the exception of the mechanic and the pilots, everybody's a Liberian employee, and being able to cross those barriers to get the message across well. The leadership aspect of just leading people, leading by example, setting the expectations, and then holding them accountable. That's all about the same. Although generally, from what I can tell, they're not used to that. A lot of it is the what I would call poor leadership mentality of, I say you do, and if you don't, I yell at you. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. But I have watched the guy who's in place now, the way he's operated, and he does a really good job of it. And it's relationship. It can be friendship, but it's also not so close that somebody's getting favoritism, those kinds of things. Because in the Liberian culture, trust means turn a blind eye, right? When somebody's doing something wrong, and that's culturally, even for the Christians, sometimes that's a difficulty for them, and it's all about taking the roundabout path to get something done, which is typically the I'm hiding something path, right? And make a little money on the side, by the way, that kind of thing. That's very common. So circumventing those kinds of problems culturally, whereas you and I are there's an expectation that you're going to be honest, and if I ask you to do something, your job, I tell you what the job is, why you're doing it, and then lay out the expectation on how to do it, and then you go for it. I don't micromanage, you just go for it. That's a little, you have to be a little more micromanaging, just because you have to make sure that they're not doing the cultural thing.
So you're kind of playing by their rules.
Yeah,
you're playing their game, which is set up with those things. But you're bringing in a different kind of mindset, different kind of rules.
That's right. Yeah, and line it up. And as long as from my point of view and my experience as a leader in leadership, as long as you lay that out at the beginning, then it's fair. It's fair game, because this is what we expected, and this is what, instead of just springing it like you see them, hey, you're stealing, now we're going to jump all over you. But no, we told you at the beginning, this is what's expected of you. These are our tenets to follow, and all of us are accountable to follow those tenets. And some of the things that you and I consider left unsaid, and that's fine. They can be left unsaid because we understand that in our culture, that you don't do certain things. You have to say them there. You know what I mean? So, you have to spell that out more, I guess. And you also have to consider the education level. So you hire people with a certain level of education to do what you need them to do, and you train them for whatever you need them to learn. And they're, I guess, if you wanted to make comparisons, you could see that they have a little bit higher of an education. But even then, because of their methods of education, it's nothing like yours and mine here in North America. So I'll give you an example. They learn your basic speaking, your basic reading, your basic math, and that's about it. Cognitive skills, anything beyond rote, it's not really there. Logic, that kind of stuff is not there. If they see it in front of them, they can react to it. But being proactive and those kind of things, those concepts don't exist. So one of my coworkers, Liberian guy, was giving me directions to a location to pick up something, and he was like, "Okay, so you go down this street and you turn left on this street, and then you're going to pass by this building, but you don't turn there. You keep going. You go over here and you're going to see this building on your left, but you don't turn there." I'm like, for us, it's like, just tell me what street to turn on, man. Yeah. Or he asked me to do. I had two vehicles to put fuel in and so pick up some water, right? And it's a simple task, right? Big deal. I'll go fill a vehicle, fill another one, go get the water at the same time, come back. And we have to, when we do cash requests from our little cash box, we have to have 3 signatures. And so he'd already filled out the forms for that. He handed me the cash, but he only handed me the cash to fill up one vehicle. And I paused and I was like, "Why aren't you giving me all the money, man? Just, And I asked him, I said, "Why aren't you giving me the money?" "Oh, I just thought you would go fill the vehicle and then I'd give you the money for the next one." It's because of their culture. It's because they might
still,
they might go and just say, and that's normal. Even if they're a believer in Jesus and they know not to lie and cheat and steal and all those things, and they even kind of know what's wrong anyway, they might, if it's $50 I'm going to put in this tank, then maybe I'll take 5 on the side, Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, they're gonna, exactly. Their gauge is going to show the same.
There's a term for that, and it's called, on the other aspect of things, of being able to understand the rules that the world is playing by, but still understanding the moral concept, or the moral construct that you're operating under. Tony Robbins called it being in the world, but being in your heart.
Right.
Which is understanding the world that you live in, the social construct, right?
Yes.
And understand what's expected, but still be strongly in your heart, right? A strong spiritual connection to a higher power, higher being, and being able to operate within that, but without being naive.
Right.
You can't.
Yes, correct.
Can't be naive.
That's a good way to look at it too, because naivety exists in every facet of human, civilization, some way or another. You see it all the time, and I've tried to make it a point not to be, fooled,
Yeah.
as best as I can. And sometimes you're caught broadsided. I mean, it happens regardless.
I think it's those things that you
sometimes.
said where like I shouldn't have to say this to you.
Yes,
Right?
yeah. And that's where frustration comes in. So that's another part of the leadership aspect you were talking about is trying to keep your cool enough, because it happens so often that it's easy to build the frustration within you, and to say, and have compassion for them, understand, I get asked for money all day, every day. I mean, it happens all the time, and it gets old after a while, and it gets frustrating, but I have to step back and just detach and say, I understand why they're doing it, and I probably would do the same.
Right.
You know what I mean?
100%.
So, especially when you got a family, so you want to feed their mouths. You're seeing them suffer. You don't want them to suffer. So I get it. But it's a ongoing process to like you said, remain in your heart and also feel for them as a person. See them through the eyes of Jesus, how Jesus would see them. He loves everyone equally, and try to love them the same, and ask God to help you love them the same, because it's easy to not love them. You know what I mean?
And it's not, you're tending to the garden, right?
Yeah.
Tend to your garden,
Yeah.
so somebody else can tend to theirs.
Yeah.
You're doing what you can, but
Yeah.
you can't sit there and start handing out $1 bills to every person.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So what is your jiu-jitsu journey? How does that play a role into you being out there?
I learned about jiu-jitsu from Jocko Willink. You might be familiar with him, yeah. And because I was interested in leadership, so I learned about him being, writing the book and things like that, and I started listening to his podcast. And that was when I was still working in the EMS gig, and but I wanted to learn how to be a good leader. It was something I was looking at all different avenues. But anyway, John Maxwell and so on. And so I was like, that might be cool to try. And I didn't know much about it. And then one of my fellow pilots at my work was doing it, and I was asking him all about it, and he was telling me something that just made me more and more interested. So I forgot how the conversation came up with Dave, but we talked about it, and he said he was doing it. So I came here and did one of the introductory classes. You know what I mean? The adult training, the fundamentals. Yes. So I came here and did two of those actually, and then I realized, about the gi and everything, I was ready, and then it was just time. My job changed a little bit because my boss changed bosses, and then they had different expectation, and I was gone a lot more, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this and do family. So it was always in the back of my mind. I always wanted to do it. I went to there's a church over there. There's a lot of churches in Liberia, but I went to one church that a lot of expats go to, and one of them was the doctor for the U.S. Embassy. And we went to there's a hotel there that has a cafe, and it's kind of nice, and it's one of the nicer places in town. So a lot of people go there after the service, and so we started chatting, and he was talking to somebody he brought about jiu-jitsu, and I was like, "Oh, you do jiu-jitsu?" So he's like, "Yeah, we just kind of do it impromptu. Whoever wants to come." It was him and one of the Marine embassy guards, who are the higher level guys, the higher trained guys, and just come on, man. We do it every Sunday. Come on over, So I started showing up on Sundays, and man, it was just
That's beautiful.
It was awesome. I loved it from day one. I loved it, and it's no gi.
Yeah.
So
it's jiu-jitsu. It's, regardless how you practice it, to me, it's such a life-changing experience.
Big time,
right?
Big time.
And I truly feel that if we're doing it right, if we're applying it right, with proper leadership that goes beyond arm bars and chokes,
yes,
we could change the world.
Yes,
we could change the
world.
world.
I totally agree. It's so cerebral. It gets your mind really thinking. I really appreciate the mental aspect of it, because in everything else I do, I start thinking more about what I'm doing and not just going through motions, and or coming up with ideas and how I can make those things happen and stuff like that. And even my wife has said, you're in a better mood. Right. When you, especially right after you've done that day.
I just played murder somebody.
Yeah.
I'm in a better mood.
That's right. Yeah.
I just practiced how to kill somebody. Well,
yes.
Ultimately, I think at the core of jiu-jitsu is the idea of that it's never over. It's never over.
That's correct.
And there's never a position where, okay, there's no escape. There's always an escape as long as you're willing to do the work.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then ultimately the tap is, okay, this is a teaching moment.
Yeah, right. So, I've had to reach my limit, so I've learned something. I learned a ton about myself. I've learned a ton, because you get your butt beat the whole time, right?
It's such a bubble burst.
Yeah, it is, man, big time. Yeah, hey, I'm not as cool as I thought I was.
Yeah, I'm not God's gift to fighting.
Exactly. Yeah, right. I'm nothing, and now I know, what it takes to reach for that goal. Try to get that goal, and like you said, you'll never end it. You'll never end it, because there's always something to learn And even just the other day when I rolled in here, I think there were about 10 guys total, and I was able to roll with about 7 of them. And each one I could see, okay, that's what I used to do that didn't work. Yeah. And now I'm not going to do that. And then there's another one where like, man, I don't even know what this guy's doing now. He's got me an arm bar, So you know what I'm saying? So it was all these levels, and it was just this big data dump in my brain of, oh man, wow, this is really.
Is there a jiu-jitsu spill into the Liberian culture? Is that something that they would be open to? Or?
Absolutely, I think so. They were very physical people. They have to be, right, because of work and stuff. Right. But they're very lean because they don't eat much mostly. But they're really muscular guys. And the women are not so much because a lot of their diet has palm oil in it. So there's a lot of fat from that. Right. Yeah. But the guys in general, most of them are really lean, but they don't have the stamina because they don't have the food. Right. That's what it comes down to. But I got to tell you,
they're probably fighting diseases and infections.
Oh, all the time. Yes. I mean, malaria is like malaria, typhoid. Those are normal things. We get shots for them here, and they'll go get a cure at the hospital or the clinic when they get it. Right. Sometimes they just put up with it and just kind of wait till it runs its course.
That is so crazy.
And it's torture. I mean, it's hot sweats, 3 nights in a row, and hot and cold, and I mean, you're dying. You know what I mean? And right. For younger or older, they are dying. It kills a lot of them.
Well, the last big one was in 2014, right? Because we were talking about the 2014 epidemic because we were also talking about this very fascinating island that has the chimps. Right, so
correct.
American doctors had chimps in Liberia in the 70s that they were purposely injecting with hepatitis B, and they were doing it to try to find a cure. Then in the 90s, a warlord took over, and ultimately what ended up happening, they had to ship all the chimps to this island,
right?
Because they had hepatitis, and when the big crisis, so Liberia committed to helping feed the chimps, feed them. But in 2014, with the health crisis, they cut off the funds.
Yeah,
and it had to be a private person that they're committed to continue to feed them. And they're thriving.
Right. They're still around. There's still a guy that goes out and feeds them every day. It's the same guy. And where that connection happened, I think you told me about it. I don't know where that connection happened, but I'm glad. Like you said, there's a responsibility to the animals. I think. Especially in a country like that where people are so hungry, they kill a lot of the animal population is gone in the jungle because during the war, which happened right before Ebola, people were eating whatever they can find.
Well, they were eating chimps, right? They were
everything
infected with
Ebola, right? Everything. Yeah, and that
was the biggest culture thing also that the world, right? So you have people from the WHO, the World Health Organization, that were coming in and telling them don't eat the chimps, and their response is. What are we going to eat?
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Well, there's two major factors there. One was I think they traced it to bats in the north, because there's some big mountains that as soon as you cross the border into Guinea, the mountains get really high and there's caves and whatnot, and there's plenty. Actually, their bats invade the U.S. Embassy. There's a big tree there. Oh. Yeah, once a year, like every 6 months, they'll come back, and I mean there's thousands of them. It's crazy, but they think they trace it to a bat, and like you said, they're hungry. They're going to eat, especially after the war. And the other thing was there's a lot of Islam there, and the Islam culture combined with their village beliefs. Yeah, they if an imam dies, they pour water over it, and then they all drink the water. But with Ebola, guess what happened? They all got it, and and I've got pictures I can show you of the grave sites in the north. Grave sites that Samaritan's Purse set up, even because Samaritan's Purse stayed there through the whole thing, and there's a hospital on the compound where the Samaritan's Purse office is. The hospital is run by a different organization, but everybody kind of chips in if needed. And during the crisis, it did, and a couple of expats, a doctor and nurse got it, got Ebola, and they were able to get the one dose of cure that was out there in the world at the time. Now they have a good vaccine for it and a good cure for it. In the Congo, but it was a big deal, and these are the streets I drive every day, and my friends who were there are like, yeah, there were bodies over here, bodies over there. They stacked them up in front of the U.S. Embassy, and nobody's doing anything with the bodies. They didn't want to touch them because people are getting it.
So what does it look like right now? Is it in a good place? I know they're facing some political.
Yeah, politically, yes. As far as the disease, that's tapered off now. It doesn't exist there. They learn to wash everything with bleach. Wash hands with bleach. And this is an interesting part of the culture. A big part of the culture is the handshake. And whether it's man or woman, it's the same thing every time with everybody. And it's a connection. It's a human connection. And they do it because of the connection. And so when you make that handshake, it connects you to them right away. And you're friends right away. It's kind of cool. But because of Ebola, they couldn't do it. it was like cutting off their culture. It was crazy, yeah. So they had to be trained not to do that. And hey, go wash your hands with bleach, because just physical contact would spread it.
Right.
And when they started seeing more and more and more people dying, they started believing that. They didn't believe it at first. Right. They didn't believe they would get it. They thought the government was purposely giving it to them and killing them on purpose.
The government.
Yeah, it is, man. There's no trust.
Yeah, but also we do have some instances where.
Well, you're right. It does happen, and
it does happen.
And because of what the government does do, then they're not trusted when they do something good, or somebody else that's linked with the government does. So that's all done. The political situation now is they have a president who is been in office about a year. He's got a 6-year term by their laws, and he was a star soccer player, a star Liberian soccer player, and he got voted on that popularity. And over there, the vote is direct. If I vote for you,
you get it.
You get it. Not because of my representatives. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, no electoral college, none of that is direct. So a lot of the former war soldiers, the rebel ones, the bad ones, the warlord ran ones, after the war, they became taxi drivers. So taxi motorcycles, taxi cars, and taxi, what they call a KK, which is a little 3-wheeled thing that you see in India and Thailand and stuff. So those guys were the majority, the younger people that voted for the popular guy, because that's the thing to do when you're young, is vote for the popular one. So this guy comes into power. He claimed that all university students would get free tuition and the government will pay for it and all that stuff, and none of it's happened. None of it. And so all his promises have gone down.
Sorry, socialism does not work.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's not real. It's not real, man. It's not realistic.
It sounds so cute on paper. It sounds so cute, but it's not.
Well, everybody and their brother's like, where are you going to get the money? Because really the country doesn't have the money anyway.
Right.
But he's making promises, and they're believing it at first because they want it. They want it so bad.
Right.
So a lot of people enroll all of a sudden, and now even the teachers aren't getting paid. So the teachers are government employees. The people that run security at the airports are government employees. All these things, and none of them are getting paid, and they haven't been paid for 6 months. And so how do you survive, right? It goes back to, I have a job, I give you food because I got it. You know what I mean? It goes back to that. And a little bit of money here, a little money there, because they're getting paid on their job. And there's not a lot of jobs to be had. It's government or IT or nursing, and that's about it. You know what I mean? There's some businesses there outside of the Lebanese. There's some businesses there and things, and there's some there's some guys that work for the Lebanese or whatever, or the ones that work for us and things like that. And they are getting paid, so there's money. But it's
vote for butt naked.
Yeah, right. Yeah, bring him back.
Bring him back.
It's funny you say that, because the guy that was the head of the coup that killed Doe is trying to get back into politics. His name is Prince Johnson. You might have heard about him. So he's trying to get back into politics as well. He's still around. He's still around. He's still trying to get back in. Yeah, and people are like, it's so weird. It's the culture. I'm like, why would you even want to go for that guy when you know what he did? And they just want to change. They want it to be better than it was. And before the war, the economy was actually pretty good. Right. Now it hasn't come back. They have not bounced back.
They're just
very desperate.
Very desperate. Promises.
Yep.
So thank you, man. So just let's finish up with, tell us how to support your vision. Tell us how to support the organization. Where can we go if people want to donate? It's donation based.
Yeah. Samaritan's Purse is SamaritansPurse.org. If you give a general donation, they'll put it in the general fund. It'll go to wherever they see the need. If you make it specific in a notation, they will make it specifically for that need. So if you wanted to support Liberia, for example, you would say on your donation, if you do it online, I would like this money to go to Liberia. They'll put it right to that. They want to honor what they feel that God has told you to put it in for. And they want to honor the person that did it in that way. So they don't pull from one fund to put it in another. They never do that. They're very transparent in that regard, which is part of the reason why I think they're so blessed and successful, is because they're so honorable and transparent in that way. So SamaritansPurse.org, I mean, in a sense, it'd be paying my paycheck, but I'm not asking for it. It is a missions organization that does pay its people, when many of them do not. Many of them you have to raise your own support to do the mission. Mm-hmm. In this case, you don't. So I have a paycheck. I mean, I get regular pay.
Well, I think it's only right.
Yeah. For what's being done over there, right. And not only that, but and I'm not saying I deserve it, but from their point of view, if I were in their shoes, I could say it's going to be hard to get a helicopter pilot trained when he can make double the money in the United States to bring his family to this little African country. Yeah, right. You can make, it's really a lot less pay, but you have to be doing it for a purpose. And I have to say, this is 20 years, man. This is the best job I've ever had. It's the best job I've ever had because I know that something's coming out of it that's legit. You know what I mean? That's legit and it's for the kingdom.
Beautiful.
So,
well, thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for your time, man.
Thanks,
I appreciate
sir.
it. Bye.